In the early spring of 1922, on a small, isolated farmstead in rural Bavaria, a crime occurred that would remain unresolved for more than a century. It involved an entire family, a remote property, and a series of warning signs that, in hindsight, suggested something was already very wrong. This is the case of the Hinterkaifeck Murders. The Hinterkaifeck farm was located about 70 kilometers north of Munich, surrounded by forest and farmland. It was home to 6 people: Andreas Gruber and his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, her 2 children Cecilia and Joseph, and a newly hired maid named Maria Baumgartner. The family was known locally, but they lived in relative isolation. Neighbors later described them as private and reserved, and in some cases, difficult. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Andreas Gruber reported several unsettling Gatten. He claimed to have found unfamiliar footprints in the snow, leading from the forest to the farmhouse, but not leading back out. Soon after, he discovered a newspaper on the property that no one in the household had purchased. Strange noises were reportedly heard coming from the attic. Despite these concerns, no one left the farm or contacted authorities. On March 31st, 1922, Maria Baumgartner arrived at Hinterkaifeck for her first day of work. She had replaced a previous maid who quit suddenly, later saying she believed the farm was haunted. That night, something happened inside the barn. Over the course of several hours, all 6 residents were murdered with a mattock, a farming tool similar to a pickaxe. Investigators later determined that 4 of the victims, Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and young Cecilia, were lured one by one into the barn, where they were killed. Inside the house, the remaining 2 victims were murdered in their beds. 2-year-old Joseph and the maid Maria were both killed after the others. There were no signs of forced entry. What made the case even more disturbing was what appeared to happen afterward. Evidence suggested the killer, or killers, remained on the property for several days. The livestock had been fed. Meals had been prepared. A fire had been maintained in the stove. It appeared that whoever committed the murders continued living among the victims. The bodies were not discovered until April 4th, when neighbors grew concerned that the family had not been seen for several days. A repairman and 2 local men went to the farm to investigate. They found the bodies stacked in the barn, partially covered with hay. The crime scene was heavily contaminated before police arrived. Curious villagers walked through the house, touched objects, and even moved bodies. The investigation quickly grew complicated. Authorities interviewed dozens of witnesses and suspects, including former employees, neighbors, and even members of the family. At one point, Victoria Gabriel's husband, who had supposedly died during World War I, was considered, though no evidence confirmed he was alive. Despite extensive questioning and multiple theories, no one was ever charged. Over the decades, suspects included a disgruntled neighbor, former farmhands, and even unknown drifters. None of the theories could be proven. In 1923, the Hinterkaifeck farmhouse was demolished. The land was eventually reused, and today only a small memorial marks the location. In 2007, German police reopened the case for a final review, applying modern profiling techniques to the original files. Even then, no definitive suspect could be named. The murders at Hinterkaifeck remain officially unsolved. What happened on that isolated Bavarian farm continues to raise questions about warning signs ignored, isolation, and how a crime so brutal could leave behind no clear answers. More than a century later, the silence surrounding Hinterkaifeck remains. Thank you for taking the time to watch this story. If you found this case informative, consider liking the video and subscribing. New cases are posted regularly, and your support helps the channel continue.